Hey guys, trying something a bit different today instead of my regular time lapse. A bunch of you asked for something other than space marines, so today we've got 3 squigs. This is the before and this is the after. Doing something a bit different today. We're going through as a speed paint, so I'm going to have a bit of an audio overlay while I go through the time lapse, just because I don't think you guys want to sit here for the whole thing. But what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a 15-minute, a 30-minute and a 60-minute version of each squig. And what we've got here is the 15-minute one starting off. At the moment I'm applying a belly or undertone of warm grey from AK Interactive, probably one of my favourite paints at the moment in general. The only problem with this paint though is that it's a bit finicky through the airbrush. It's got like a really lumpy consistency unless you really over dilute it. Which then makes it a little bit tricky to work with in terms of just consistency. So it's a great colour, but through an airbrush I probably didn't need to. However, just with 15 minutes on the clock, airbrushing is probably the easiest way to get those really neat base layers. As you can see here though, I'm already 4 minutes in and I haven't even started my top layer. So this is Squigz purple from Games Workshop. Not my favourite purple to work with overall, but still a relatively nice colour as a base layer. Now the important thing that I want to highlight here is that this is 15 minutes. We're not getting a whole lot done, but the most important part is just kind of having a plan before going in. So even though this is only 15 minutes of actual paint or brush work, I spent maybe 30 minutes per model thinking about the colours that I wanted to use before I got there. This is a mid layer of 1-to-1 Screamer Pink and Squigz Purple, and then we've got another layer of just straight Screamer Pink coming through here. So yeah, it's just really in this instance about trying to slap paint on, and I'll have a more specific point at the end of the video that I'd like to highlight. But for now I'll just let you watch this as we go through, and we'll come back in a minute. So with this colour tone here, I wasn't actually loving it. In my mind it came out a little bit differently, but then when I was mixing the actual colours together, it wasn't what I was kind of hoping for. It's a bit too desaturated. But once again, in a 15-minute speed paint, once you've kind of done all that planning, it's too late. You're just going, you're just doing it. If this was another model, probably could have just done that mid layer as an airbrush layer again and then gone again. But yeah, for this one, it got the job done. The model got finished in 15 minutes, and it actually doesn't look too bad for how long I was able to put into it. So just going in with some really, this is that warm grey again. Also, it covers really well. Not even really having time to like let layers properly dry. Like with some of my teeth, the colour was bleeding around here. But if you're trying to get stuff done, This was probably the most challenging squig of the lot, just because of the time constraints. Just trying to speed up the drying process with the airbrush here. And yeah, I think it's ironic that while doing the speed paint challenge, I didn't actually use any speed paints. So no contrasts, no Army Painter speed paint, no express color from Vallejo. I didn't have the time. I won't have the time for it to be able to actually completely dry. So it's all just regular brushwork. Obviously skipping some details, just trying to get as much color as I can on to have the effect sell. But yeah, this one's coming to an end here, and then we'll have a bit of a nicer shot of the squig while it's done. So not the prettiest, but I think for 15 minutes I'm actually pretty wrapped with how it came out. The color shift is really funky, especially in terms of like on an organic material. That's something that I explore a bit more on the other squigs as well, and I don't mind how it came out. So yeah, this is the first of the 3, and then we'll be getting into the next one from here. Now we've got our 30-minute squig. Weirdly, this one turned out to be my favourite one, I think, in terms of colour theory, not in terms of execution. I did something a little bit different here. This colour, instead of going with the warm grey from AK, I tried a different one. I recently got this in I had an online order, and I was $10 off, or $15 off free postage. And it was like, get a paint, and the dirty down rust effect for $15, or pay $15 for shipping. So this is one of the paints that I got from that, and it's actually a really nice paint as well. I really like the tones in it. And then, so what we're going to be doing here with these skin tones is I go in with an Inky by Darkness. I go in with a, let me paint out of my desk, which one is it? Inky by Darkness, Cabalite Green, and then I think it's a Moot Green. And yeah, the tones in this one actually came out looking really nice. Once again though, even on what you can see here from that first layer, just the processing time on washing out an airbrush, I'm still 5 minutes in. I've only done one layer just because of all the cleaning time. So yeah, airbrushes are good but hard in speed paints because they just, rather than having those tones come through on other layers, if the colours were a bit more tonally closer, I could just go with it. But because I've gone for such a stark transition between their underbelly and their top side, I don't really want that colour coming through, so I had to really clean out the airbrush in this process. And then yeah, so this is Inky by Darkness with a little bit of Cabalite Green in it. Once again, really enjoyed this colour of this squig a lot. 30 minutes was a little bit rushed. I did have the opportunity to slow down a bit, like even I noticed that I was a little bit less erratic in my motions and my mixing and my application of paint. So it was nice to have that breathing room, but it was still tough to get one model done in 30 minutes really. Now here we're going with that kind of same mix ratio that I had before with a bit of Moot Green added to it. And I was actually really shocked at how close this was to just, I think it's Warpstone Green, like their generic, what used to be called like either Goblin Green or Snot Green. So yeah, I was, Warpstone Glow is what it came out like, that's what they currently call it. I was really, it was an interesting process in colour theory here, just for how different colours actually interact when they go together. That's something that I'm trying to learn a little bit more of in my painting. And it's slow going because like you can read about something and you can kind of understand it, but then when you go to apply it, it comes out a bit differently. So this process, even though I don't love everything about it and it did feel rushed, it was still a great challenge, and I'd recommend everyone give it a shot just to see what you can achieve in 15 minutes, 30 minutes and 60 minutes, or whatever you want your timeline to be. But the process of putting that timer on yourself, you're kind of just in this mode of, I have to get it done. So you're focusing and stressing a little bit less on what the end product is, which was a really enjoyable experience. This is that warm grey again, just for their horns and claws. It's one of my go-to paints at the moment for like organic kind of bone material. From here, just applying a little bit of highlights because I did have the time to do a bit of actual brush work. A watered down layer of Moot Green. It just kind of, the more watery you make your paint, the more translucent it is, the more layers underneath you're going to show. So it's nicer over skin tones, because if you think about skin tones, they're not going to have really stark edge highlights. This just gives it a chance to kind of show everything underneath that you've already put all that effort into, rather than just covering it all up. And with the timer, I actually had the time to do the eyes on this one. I had to skip the eyes on the other one, on the first one. I just didn't have time. I tried to put the paint on the palette, and then timer ran out, so I couldn't even do the eyes. But yeah, we did the eyes on this one. This here is another one of my favourite techniques. Washes through an airbrush. Really nice for applying glazes and kind of tonal shifts. So this is Caribou Crimson just through the airbrush, and you can really build in the depth, and it's over Bordeaux Red from AK Interactive. So Bordeaux Red was the original tongue colour, and then this Caribou Crimson puts a really nice, deeper, richer tone into it that you can do via brush. It just comes out a little bit messier sometimes. You've got to be a bit more careful when you're glazing with washes via brush, and it takes longer. So through an airbrush is a great way to speed that process up. Just building some colour back in here with the Bordeaux Red, now that I've got a bit more time on the clock. So I've got around 10 minutes left at this stage, so I can actually put some of the tones back in rather than just having it a wash like on the first one. You'll notice that essentially the longer the time, the processes mostly stay the same. It just means that I can put more effort into those steps that I'm doing. So here, again, a bit more time, a bit more effort. Tried just applying a bit of like a light rust effect with the just orange. But yeah, so he's finished up here. I finished up a couple of minutes early. I wasn't going to get a whole lot done with 2 minutes left. I wanted to do the snout, which I actually forgot to do. But yeah, that's okay. It was 30 minutes and I was happy with how it turned out. The color theory really popped on this one. Like the tones just look really, really nice and rich and vibrant. Which is definitely a set of colours that I think I'm going to be using more in future. I like that transition there, I really enjoyed. So now getting into the 60-minute one where I actually had the proper time to think and breathe and apply a bit of brushwork. So I was happy with how this guy turned out. Colour theory though was a little bit off from the get-go, so it didn't turn out quite as nice as that middle squig that I did. Once again, going with that cork underbelly kind of tone, just as a really simple intro base layer. I think it takes me another 5 minutes. So cleaning an airbrush properly takes time. If I was doing all three of these in similar tones, I could have probably all knocked them out in about an hour and a half. It's like a little bit less than collective time, or maybe even faster, just because I'm doing all of them kind of in the same step and same process, if they're all the same color. But they're squigs. We get to paint them whatever wacky colours we want. That's the best part about squigs. So 5 minutes in again, and then yeah, now just starting to get to my base layer, which is essentially like a version of Dark Angel's Green, but once again, AK Interactive, really big fan of their paint range. I'm trying to primarily swap over to them, but I'm also not just abandoning all my GW paints that are still half full. As I kind of run out, I'm then starting to get different ones in. So this is Black Green from AK Interactive. And then this is where I got a bit wacky with colour theory again. I added in some turquoise to that black green from AK Interactive, and it's a nice colour. I'm happy with how the squig turned out in the end. The only issue is that I think that I did kind of the opposite here to the 30-minute squig. So the 30-minute squig, I started with like a really dark bluey green and then went up to a green. Whereas this one, I started with a dark green and went up to a blue, and I don't think the effect sold quite as well. The dark green was probably just a little bit too far away from where I ended. The colour itself, I think, still looks nice. This is like, I think, a bit more closer to the straight turquoise from AK. So this colour here was a bit more of a wild adaptation, or kind of long bomb, I guess you could say. I've gone with turquoise from AK Interactive, and then icy yellow as the tone to mix in to brighten it up without diluting it. So part of the problem is if you just add white to a color, it'll make it brighter, but it'll wash it out. It takes a bit of that saturation out of it. If you start mixing in colors that are brighter but have tones in them that work with the paint that you're putting it into, you get a really vibrant color coming out of it, rather a more vibrant and brighter color, rather than just a brighter color that is lacking saturation. So this is that that mix. Then what I'm doing here is I'm actually just using the paint that I've already mixed. I haven't actually changed the composition of it at all. The difference is, the reason why it looks brighter, especially of the part that I already airbrushed, is because that I'm applying it with the brush. Applying through brush and airbrush will look different. So you can highlight a layer that you've done through an airbrush with just a regular brush, and it'll look stronger. So I've saved a little bit of the paint here just in case I do need it for later. I forgot to do the horns on the back of him, like the ones that stand near his legs, but once again, I would have liked to have done them on, I think I did it on the green one. I skipped it on the pink one, the first one, because I didn't have time. Did it on the green one, and then just completely forgot about it on the third one. So that bronzy type colour that I'm using here, that is called Tinny Tin from Vallejo Game Colour. One of my favourite metallics. Pretty good coverage, really nice colour, relatively good sheen. It's just a very easy, simple go-to. Just a really simple metallic that I really enjoy. Once again, so we've got majority of the work done here now, which means that I've got 37 minutes to start putting some details in. And I've done some modelling on the skin. I did another one of these, like I did one of these models ages ago when I first printed them. I printed out like 10 at the time because I loved the model. But I did one back then, and I put modelling on him when I did him. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do the modelling again. So I've had a chance to apply a bit of, which one is it? It's an AK paint. Russian dark brown was what I applied originally. Then here I've gone with a layer of dark rust from AK, and now this is light orange from AK with, I think, a touch of brown mixed in, or into a touch of dark rust. But yeah, so really feeling the ability to just express a little bit more with the time that I had. So here is the first time where we'll be using a contrast or speed paint, depending on what brand you use. This is Skeleton Horde that I've watered down quite significantly. I like using the contrast as a form of like a tonal shift. So Skeleton Horde was the first part watered down, and now while it's still wet, I'm pushing a bit of, I think it's Skeleton Horde mixed with like a touch of Wildwood contrast paint. And then I kind of just work towards the transition where I want it to be darker. And I've applied or just pushed in just a very minute amount of Wildwood again. And it just gives a nicer transition than what I was doing on the first two, which was where I just do the warm grey and then hit it with like a Agrex Earthshade, just like a really heavy wash, and then layering it back up. whereas this gives a nice transition just off the paints that we're actually using, because the colours just work really well, but it takes time to be able to apply that. So I thought it was ironic that the first time that I touched a speed paint or a contrast paint was in the 60-minute model, because that was all I had time for. So I remember not loving how this looked at the start. So this is a contrast of Blood Angels Red, I think they call it, with a little bit of Druchii Violet, I think, mixed in the wash. Yeah, Blood Angels Red with a little bit of Druchii Violet, I think it was, just to kind of give it a bit. And then I also watered it down. I'm a big fan of using my contrasts watered down more as like a heavy glaze / wash than actually as a contrast. But you can use them for a wide variety of things. And here is paint number 2 from the free shipping order, Dirty Down Rust. Yeah, I like it. It's cute. You need to shake it a lot. It's apparently pretty finicky in how you apply it. It had a nice effect. I'm thinking that I might give it an actual like proper test and see how far I can push it and what I can do with it on different models. Yeah, no, I think I got a photo of it. I'm not sure if I got a photo of it for this video. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's kind of worth it. So at this stage, I'm just looking for things to fix, do, clean. I end up calling this video, or this paint, I think I call it at about the 9-minute mark, because there wasn't a whole lot that I could do within those 9 minutes from what I could see. You kind of get to a point with painting where, especially if you're on a time limit, that you paint in a series of steps and you kind of box yourself out of being able to do other things. Like if I wanted to be able to do something better or different, I would have had to have set it up differently in the earlier layers, or it takes me longer than the time that I've got. So I kind of got to this point and I was like, yeah, cool, we're mostly done. So that's pretty much it. This is the final squig. He's got a bit more effort put into him just because I've had the time to do it. I was happy with how he turned out. Colour transitions were a little bit off, but the main point that I want to get at is just getting models painted, getting things done, practicing things. And at the end of the day, if you have a quick look, all three of these, they have differences in them, but you wouldn't be able to tell that one was done in 15 minutes, one was done in 30, and one was done in 60. When you base things, when they're all standing next to each other, when they're on the tabletop, it's all gonna look good. It's just about putting that initial effort in to put paint on a model and getting things done. That's the main point. Just get painting. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.